Hey team, welcome to another Too Many Projects. I've got to get on with this motorbike again. It is taking up space in the room. Sorry for so long without any updates. It's just not been a priority for me. But I've got all the parts laid out here that are yet to go on the top of that engine. Try and get it into one piece again. And today, I'm going to try and get the head back on and then have a look at doing the timing tomorrow and get it in on this video as well. So let's go. So the engine has just been sitting here in the warm and dry. No news there, just as I left it months and months ago in the last video. Here's all the lovely parts that are still to go back on the top of that engine. We've got the head, and then all the rockers and the camshaft there, and the cover. And so we're just continuing on using a Haynes manual. See if we can get this reassembled. Okay. The next part to go in is this piece of metal with a string on the back. This bolt protrudes from the back of the cylinders, and then as you turn it from outside, it extends here, raising or lowering the top of this part, which I imagine changes the tension on the chain. The movement when this extends is not super smooth, so I'm just going to see if I can get that spring off. There we go. How did that go together? That's the little tensioning-y, control-y thingy, what's it? And there's a little pin at the top with an R-clip on it. And that goes into this hole at the top there, the bolt comes out the back, and that then up and down there. So, I'm just going to put a little bit of lovely clean engine oil all over the assembly because it's going to be moving about a little bit. The R-clip can come out. Fits down on there. It should really have a new O-ring. I probably got a new O-ring. I might have a look into that in a minute. Just going to put stuffed tissue down there again in case I drop something important into the bottom of the engine. Pop the little clip back on that. Clips are always worth replacing. I haven't. And then there's a washer and a nut that go on the outside. So you use the square profile to tension this down by moving that up and down, and then the nut on it will lock it in place. Who knows where that nut could have got to? So long ago that I took this engine apart. Guessing it's in this bucket here. Thought I'd kept them all together. Usually I would put such a plain washer and nut back on top here, but I didn't quite find the originals, but I've found these very good quality alternatives. I did find the originals, but they were pretty rusty. So, the next thing to do is to turn the square bit on here to raise the tensioner. Turning that up to the top of its travel. And then we're locking that off there, which I guess is the least tense on the chain because this is as flat as it will go. And now this bit that I did off camera before we started, this is just a chain guide on the other side. I've already put this in, but the Haynes man has just said make sure you locate it properly in the bottom, and that where I've located it there, it's just propped in. But it ain't moving this time. The bottom of it is stuck in a notch in the bottom, and the top of it's got a notch at the top here. And I guess with that in place, the next thing to go on is the head. So this is the bottom of the head, and you can see there's a dowel stuck in there, and they're actually oil ports. Oil go through these. I've got two which have been stuck in the head. There's the second one. And 2 aren't here, so hopefully they're behind me on the desk. They are. Woo! They're going into the cylinders here on the outer 4 holes of these bolts. The back left, back right, and front right have O-rings. The front left doesn't, and that's okay. I've still got the other 2 downs. They need a little bit of a clean up. And the 2 that are stuck in the head, I'm not worried about because they're stuck in the head, and the important thing is the O-ring that seals them, stops the oil from getting into the cylinders, is on the cylinders. So, and they're coming out fine. Hopefully, I've got some new ones of those to hand just here. Oh, that's them. They're quite deep and square. All the dowels that go in to these 4 spots are the same, but the holes they go into aren't. So it's okay if they're all the way pushed in and some of them aren't the same height. Now, what have I got here? This is the front of the engine. I've got front left in and back right in. So these 2 are in the head. So I want to put one in there. That's where they fit. Right, and then place a new cylinder head gasket. This one's important. There we go. One new cylinder head gasket. I've just moved the guide out of place. I've just put in a minute ago. Good, that's fine. Stick the head on, it says, basically. Of course. So we need a little bit of wire. Just going to hook that through the chain. Dropping the chain is a bad thing. So I'm going to put that through the chain. Pull the chain up into the head. Lower the head down slowly. Right, double check the gasket is exactly where the gasket should be. Push it all the way down. Put the safety pencil back on the cam chain. Remove the safety wire. Okay. So we've got to insert the bolt that holds the top of the chain tensioner. Which is a very specific bolt. Could it be this one? That's the right bolt. Yes! My filing system is not a total loss. No. There we go. Alright, that's the head back on. Not sure exactly about which bolts are going where right now, so before I do any more this evening, I'm just going to leave that there and do a little bit more bolt identification before I keep going. Have a look back at the last video. Keeping hold of bolts was not my strong point last night, so I'm just taking the time to find the correct bolts that we're going to need in the next session and give them a little bit of a clean before we continue. And the first thing to do today, we're going to be bolting this head down, is to take these freshly clean bolts, and 2 of them go each side of the tensioner there. Make sure they're threading in nicely. Finger loose there, that's that one. This one at the front comes with a little nut. Goes in there, and then not under the valve cover but actually outside the front of the head there's another bolt that goes through into that nut that we just put in, and we finger tighten that one as well. Position the camshaft sprocket to the left of the chain and insert the camshaft from the right-hand side. The timing marks in the form of two opposed dots scribed onto the sprocket face must face towards the left-hand side. To allow the camshaft centre boss to enter the sprocket centre, the sprocket must be positioned with the offset cutaway approximately vertical. With the sprocket positioned against the flange, rotate the camshaft until the slot machined into the left-hand end is in the 3 o'clock position, flush with the cylinder head mating surface. Rotate the sprocket so that the opposed dot marks are parallel with the cylinder head. Apply a spanner to the alternator rotor centre bolt on or the engine turning hexagon on 200 models and turn the rotor in a forwards anti-clockwise direction until the T1 mark or T mark on the ATU is in exact alignment with the raised index mark on the casing. Locate the dowels on each camshaft bush with the milled recess in the cylinder head. Now lift the cam chain onto the sprocket and align the bolt holes in the sprocket with those in the camshaft flange. That is one step in this timing process. And it sounds like we're going to need to turn the engine over as well, which I don't like doing with the cylinders loose. I suppose I've got those finger tight bolts, so it's not going to move very far. Anyway, let's try and do that. How hard can it be? Okay, so we're replacing the safety pencil with the safety wire. This is the left-hand side of the engine on the right-hand side of the screen, the right-hand side on the left side of the screen. I'm not going to rotate it to make you can all get over that. I'm going to hook the chain over the camshaft. Put that in on the left with the timing marks facing towards the left. And then just carefully, without scratching anything and ruining it, wiggle that camshaft all the way through. Alright, and then there's a removable bushing that goes on the end like that. Okay, so the camshaft is in, everything's in the wrong place, but everything's in the right order. Next, with the sprocket positioned against the flange, rotate the camshaft until the slot machined in the left-hand end is in the 3 o'clock position. So this is the left-hand end. I do see a slot. So that little notch in the end of the camshaft is now at 3 o'clock. So you may want to review the last video, but now it says you need to make sure we're at top dead center basically. So there's a T mark inside that, behind that plate, and then there's a little mark on the outside of the case you can see, which is lined up, which I don't need to line up again because they're still lined up from when we took the engine apart recently. Then make sure we're perfect rotation on this chain and we pull it up. I'm going to make sure the bushings are located where they need to be. They've got a little dowel on them that sits in a little notch on the cylinder head. We're going to step back a little bit and go, this is definitely flat with that. The engine is definitely at top dead center on the T mark is in the right place, and therefore when the chain's on the sprocket in exactly the right place, the timing marks on the sprocket will be, which are these two little marks each side, will be totally flat, parallel with the cylinder head, and these holes that go into the camshaft to bolt it onto the flange will be in the right place, and they're not. So I just need to lift that chain off and move the cam sprocket around a bit. It's one link out, so how am I going to get one link and pay attention to it? Okay, so again, let's try that. The cam is right. Top dead center is definitely right. Oh, chains on the sprocket and the sprocket holes line up, so that's where I'm going to bolt that on to the camshaft with the bolts for bolting the camshaft. Where did they go? Hi, Future Simon here in voiceover format. while my colleague past Simon is messing around looking for bolts in a bucket, I just wanted to note that I have a little bit more experience than past Simon, and what I would say is at this point you should tension the chain just a little bit. The reason being that when the chain tensioner comes up against the chain from the back of the engine there, it can put a curve in the chain, which means the back side of the chain might tighten up a bit and pull that sprocket that I've just perfectly aligned slightly out of perfectly parallel with the top of the head, which I did, and at this stage you're watching me do it. But that also helps with keeping the chain tight when we come in a minute to have the first bolt in and we want to turn the engine over. It helps if the chain has a little tension on it, especially if it's not a new chain. Back to your regularly scheduled program. I'll speak to you again in a moment. Aha! So I found my cam sprocket bolts and I'm going to put one in so that nothing's moving. Camera cut out there, I don't know how much I lost. So I'm just adding a little bit of Loctite onto that bolt, just to screw into that sprocket. And then once I do this up with my fingers, this needs to be done down to 20 Newton meters. I usually am extremely amusing with my lower torqued bolts. And I just sort of estimate 10 to 12 to be not that tight and 20 to 30 to be pretty tight with a small spanner like this. It hasn't caused me any problems yet, but the real reason I don't do it on the lower tension bolts is because I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low. I would love a torque wrench to go that low. Something not near the top of a long list of tools I would love. But that's good for now. And so we will just Hi, Future Simon here, interrupting your regularly scheduled program to bring you a special news report on what I just did wrong in that video there. I did one thing wrong, and I would say there's a slight change in how the manual works that I would recommend. This is what I would recommend to do. Number 1, put the engine to top dead center. Number 2, line up the notch in the camshaft facing backwards. Number 3, pop your sprocket on with the 2 dots which are on the outer edge of the sprocket facing towards this side of the engine or the left, and line them up so they are also parallel and flat with the top of this head. Then you're going to want to lift the chain onto the sprocket with it aligned correctly, which can be tricky. In order to do that, you're going to have to make sure that the chain tensioner is fully loosened off, because you need to pull that chain over the sprocket. Once you've got it in place and the bolt holes line up and the 2 little dots line up and the little notch on the camshaft lines up and top dead center lines up, that's when it gets tricky. So what I did, which was wrong, was I put one of the bolts in the sprocket. Then I turned the engine over. Let's see what direction the instructions say. Anti-clockwise, anti-clockwise, anti-clockwise. That's what I thought. So I turned the engine over clockwise, which is backwards. And because the chain was still loose, it jumped in the bottom of the engine on the sprocket that's at the other end of the shaft, the bottom end, the important end. And that meant that it was all out of alignment again, because I might have been in alignment briefly, but now the chain's in a different place in the bottom end, so it's not going to work. What I would recommend is instead, once you've got your first bolt in on the sprocket and everything lined up, tension the chain slightly, move it anti-clockwise like the instructions say to get to the other side of the sprocket and put the second bolt in, and then move it back to top dead center and tension the chain again when you're supposed to at the end of the procedure. Do it that way, everything goes much better. Back to past Simon. So I've got 2 of these rocker carrying units and rockers which are in good condition, and I have cleaned up a little bit. So we've got some dowels that have to go in here. This one, this one, this one, and this one. This has a dowel, this has a dowel, this has a dowel, This one hasn't got a dowel, which means because this one has a dowel stuck in the rocker carrier, I know that one goes there with the F towards the front. I also now note that 2 and 5 are that one and that one. That one and that one are longer. Right, first thing to do is to slacken off these thingies, pushers. Done up nice and tight. Just so, flipping heck. Someone did not read the torque spec. So the next thing to do is to lubricate this whole apparatus with a little bit of engine oil. It's all going to move before the oil arrives. I'm just going to slide that one in gently for the minute. Just do the second one. Oh, there we go. No, it's fine. It's fine as it is. There we are. Then, here we have a washer and a nut for each and every one. Okay. All just finger tight. Now, we need to do them up in the correct order to the correct torque. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. Something like that. I'm going to have to get this out while I do it. And then 9, 10, 11. 14 foot-pounds on the nuts, 10 on the bolts. I can do foot-pounds. No, I can do meter kilograms. Okay, good, right. Kilogram meters, kilogram meters. Don't know what is Newton meters. On the 2 on the nuts, 1.4 on the bolts. Number 1. So from finger tight, like half a turn. Number 2, half a turn. Number 3. There it is, half a turn. Number 4. Number 5, half a turn. Number 6, half a turn. I'm just making up the half turn bit, by the way. The idea is to approach the correct torque progressively. They haven't given me strict instructions on what progress I need to make. That's number 8. Half a turn, here we go. There it is, half a turn. That's number 10, half a turn. That's number 11, half a turn. There we go, we start at number 1 again. So, number 1, number 2, 3, there we go. That's it. 7. No. So with that all together properly and the head bolted down correctly on top, the next thing to do is the valve pusher gaps here, which are super slackened off. In my case, I'm going to be replacing them all because, well, here's a picture of how I undid them. They were pretty stuck. And see if you can work out what I did wrong here. But since then, I have purchased a very nice set of Barco spanners. I actually rounded off all the nuts to one extent or another. So this is super easy. It's got a square top and a nut on it. And all we're going to be doing is just making sure the gap between this pusher on the tap is 0.05 millimeters from the top of the valve that it pushes. Then hold it steady in that place with the square top and just tighten up the lock nut. So first check, make sure we're at top dead center. Which I can see we've actually slipped off by a tiny fraction. Now, I think I've understood from the manual, we're going to do this side, and then after we've done this side, we're going to rotate the engine 360 degrees, putting this cylinder on the compression stroke, and we're going to do that side Then we're going to turn 360 degrees again, putting us back where we started, and we're going to check this side, then 360 degrees again, putting us back with this side on the compression stroke, and check that side. So 0.05 millimeters, there's my little gap blade. And so that's going to be going between the two, tighten it down in the center there. I'm going to hold the square end and just do up the lock nut. And then just double check it. So I've got play, I can feel play without the gapper in there. And then when I put the gapper in, it's barely any play at all. So that means I'm at 0.05 mil gap there and it's locked down. So I'll just do the same for the other three. Now this is the point at which the manual asks you to tension the chain, which I've already done previously, and I recommend you do as well. But the method, in theory, is just to undo this lock nut. The process of undoing this lock nut will cause the chain to tension itself. Then simply hold the square end in place once you've loosened it off, and do the lock nut back up. And then, to finish off this episode, I'm going to quickly clean up the lid, at least on the inside. I've got a new seal to go on there. Which is tricky to fit because it's too long. And then I need to go into my box of bolts and see if I can find the very, very specific nuts to go in the top. They're very, very specific bolt with a very, very specific shaped washer to seal this up. The nuts, the heads are a little bit unhappy, but they'll do. And we're doing these up to 1 kilogram force meter kilograms, which is in real terms 10 Newton meters. So I'm going to estimate that that's not too tight. This is quite tight though. Can't really compress that rubber seal, I suppose. And then the last thing to go on is going to be the inlet manifolds on the back there. They need some new O-rings, but I'm not going to do that now because I'm run out of time for today, and it's about time I got this video out. I think I'm just going to stuff some tissues in the back there to stop anything untoward getting into the cylinders. But look, I should take really my Fingerprints Workshop moment and play some aspirational music. I can't do the voice over the top of aspirational tone and bemusement at my own achievement, but you know, it feels good. It feels good to have it back together at least. It's a little bit of a milestone in the project. So much more to go though. But thanks for watching in the meantime. Like and subscribe. It doesn't help the channel or anything like that, but it does encourage me to keep going, and I'm lacking enthusiasm on this now, so liking and subscribing is much appreciated. Have a good one.